But first, another week of sexual misconduct allegations plague the political and media worlds. And with Congress returning next week, we look ahead to Republican efforts on taxes and more. And for all that, we turn to the analysis of Shields and Brooks. That's syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. Welcome, gentlemen. So let's start, Mark, with the sexual allegations cascading across new names this week. It's crossing party lines. Al Franken among the Democrats, Congressman Joe Barton. Not sexual harassment, but a personal relationship. Pictures have emerged. What are we? I mean, we know that politicians and people in the media aren't perfect. Never have been. But what are we learning now from all this?
Well, I think we're learning, Judy, the dimensions of it. I mean, this isn't the pass at the office Christmas party after 2 drinks. Would you like a ride home, Sally? I mean, this is abusive stuff, and it's male directed. It's male dominated. It's male power. I'm embarrassed for my gender. To read this stuff, I'm appalled. Quite frankly, I have not led a cloistered life, but the men exposing themselves, and just this is a form of human depravity and abuse that is unrecorded and unreported, and I think we're seeing a sea change in attitudes in this country. The one encouraging aspect is generationally, younger men find the harassment, they agree more with women about the prevalence of it and the unacceptability of it. And for that, I'm cheered and encouraged. But I have to say, you know, it's not a party thing. Obviously, it's not an ideological thing. It's a power thing, and it's a male thing overwhelmingly.
David, do you think we may be seeing a turn, a change in people's willingness to put up with this?
Yeah, well, certainly the willingness of people to come out, the encouragement of people to come out, the instinctive siding with the people who come out, which I think is the right posture. I think we are seeing a change. And what interests me is, I was wondering, Harvey Weinstein, that probably would have happened. But if Donald Trump were not president, would it have had these massive ripple effects, so it becomes a big national change? And I think the reaction to Trump is part of the deal here. And we've talked about Trump maybe polluting our national culture, but it could be the reaction to Trump is also making us hypersensitive and making us want to correct the national culture. And so you could see a reaction to the Trump wave, I think, has lowered norms and standards. But a lot of people would say, no, we're not happy with this. We're going to raise norms and standards. And so I hope this is part of that larger reestablishment of what is decency.
Judy, one point, just a minor point, but we find out this week that there have been $17 million in settlement payments to members of the staffs on Capitol Hill who have been sexually abused or harassed or mistreated.
Taxpayer money.
Taxpayer money, 256, I think, settlements. And the idea that, yes, you want to protect, obviously, the victim and the identity of the victim and the pain of the victim, but the idea that this is private and not public. I mean, this ought to be bipartisan. It ought to be Nancy Pelosi and Paul Ryan walking into the House Administration Committee or the House Clerk's office and saying, all right, these records are going public, and every member who was involved in the settlement you know, has to be known, and the amount paid and the charges. I mean, and as I say, protect the innocent, but don't protect the guilty of those, and especially with this taxpayer money involved.
And David, that part about non-disclosure is just one part of this convoluted, complicated process that people who have been victims as working in the Congress or working for a member of Congress have had to go through in order to file even a complaint.
Yeah, no, and you think about, you know, so many, every summer, hundreds, thousands of college students are going into these offices as interns. And you don't know where these kids are going. You don't know what, you know, who the boss is. And there has been on Capitol Hill this back channel gossip of who is a good boss, who is a bad boss, who is abusive. But the idea that taxpayer money is going to cover this stuff up just whoever set that up, it's just mind-boggling, frankly.
And I have to say, when it comes to the young people, whether they're coming out of college or wherever, Mark, the people who've been accused in the news media, whether it's Charlie Rose, Mark Halperin, and others, so often these are interns or young women who are just starting out, in their careers, in their lives, and they become the main victims.
They become the victims, and the number of stories, Judy, of young women who'd gone into journalism, and that this experience, whether it was you know, at NPR or Charlie Rose or Mark Halperin, and it soured them on the career. It led to a career change. That you know, it's a loss to the country. The pain, they carry it with them every day of their life.
And one of the things that's striking to me about it, and this was true of the Charlie Rose show, which I've been on many, many times, is the narcissism of it. The people who are perpetrating it can't even see the human beings on the other side of what's happening. There's a saying that obscenity is covering up the soul of another human being. And when it's as if the other person is just not even another human being, and they just dehumanize the person, and of course that's how it feels.
Well, it's incredibly disturbing, and I know I'm one of many who thinks we have to continue to report on this, to continue to talk about it, as long as we know that it's going on. Mark, so much else to talk about this week, but one is the Russia investigation. This report in the New York Times yesterday that the lawyers representing Michael Flynn, the president's former national security advisor, are no longer communicating with the president's legal team, which could mean some kind of negotiation, cooperation is underway with the special counsel. We don't know that for sure, but this could mean something's happening.
Whatever it means, Judy, in all likelihood, it means nothing good for the White House. It's always been a matter of fascination and curiosity, I think, to those of us who cover politics and care about politics, to watch Donald Trump, a man not known for self-sacrifice or self-absorption, self-concern with others, react to Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn was the one person caught up, whoever worked for him, for whom he actually went to James Comey, the FBI director, and said, can't you make this go away for Mike Flynn? He asked Dan Coates, the director of national intelligence, to intervene with James Comey to see if they couldn't drop it to Michael Flynn. The idea that Michael Flynn has some information. And Michael Flynn is vulnerable, we know, for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is a former Army general. He went to give that speech in Russia without the appropriate and legal clearance he needed, and the unreported $500,000 in earnings to represent interests identical to, or at least very close to, the Turkish government. So I think he's vulnerable. He has a son who is an admitted zealot, who, you know, was a conspiracy buff and all the rest of it about Pizzagate, the satanic conspiracy of child molestation, totally fabricated, totally bogus. So I think there's a lot of pressure points and vulnerabilities with Michael Flynn.
And we know this is something the White House is really worried about, David.
Yeah, and we don't know if he's cooperating. It may be part of a negotiation to cooperate. But if he does, it signals two things to me. One is that they're going after somebody higher. That they wouldn't strike a deal with Flynn or even attempt to if they didn't have their eyes on somebody else. Doesn't mean it's Trump, but it could be somebody higher. And the second thing is Flynn, in the brief moments when this was all going on during the campaign, during the transition, very early in the administration, Flynn was right in the center. He was Grand Central Station for all the Russia contacts. So if they have some disparate things, Flynn would be the person who could fit it all together. And what I've always been poo-pooing the scandal, in part because I haven't seen how Trump personally would have been involved, and we need that for it to be really a major, major scandal. It could be Flynn could be there to say Trump did offer to get rid of sanctions if they would help with the election. And that would be the conversation that really would turn this into a major story.
And then we think of the other players in the White House, and we don't know their role, whether it was Jared Kushner's, the president's son-in-law, whether it was his son, Donald Trump Jr., in the efforts to reach the Russians, but clearly something we're all keeping an eye on. Just finally, quickly, and David, I'm going to start with you on this, the Republican tax plan, tax cuts. Normally, this is a very popular idea, but there's been, I think, a surprising amount of pushback from different nonpartisan think tanks saying, wait a minute, no, the middle class is not going to benefit necessarily very much or at all from this, and the deficit's going to balloon.
Yeah, and to me, the big story was the University of Chicago Booth Business School came out with a study of, I think it was 48 economists, and it's a very bipartisan. And tax reform in principle is super popular among economists. But they've designed a bill so these economists do not think it would help growth, with one exception, and they think it would explode the deficit. So you take a very popular concept and you write the bill in such a way that it becomes extremely unpopular among the people who know most about it on both parties. That's a trick. That's hard to do, to be that incompetent. And so you know, the Republicans feel huge pressure to pass this thing, but I still have to feel there are at least 3, 4, 5, 6 senators who really do care about the deficits, really do not want to destroy the federal budget, and that they will somehow stand in the way. It would take major courage to do so, but a lot of them really, really do care about debt.
I want to believe what David wants to believe. I mean, I really no. I think we've found out that the Republican Party does not believe it about deficit. I mean, I can recall 7 years ago when then the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, made a very serious public statement that the national debt was the greatest threat to national security. And Barack Obama was president, and the national debt doubling, of course, in the interim. But, you know, Republican after Republican said, this is absolutely right. This is a matter of national security. And so now we're really down to five Republicans. Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, Jim Lankford, John McCain, and who am I missing?
Maybe Susan Collins, maybe.
Well, I think Susan Collins. I think Susan Collins is there on other philosophical grounds, but certainly that. But today, to add to the problems of the economists, the Catholic bishops came out and called it fundamentally flawed, this tax bill, and said that it will raise income taxes on the working poor to give a tax cut to millionaires and billionaires. Now, you know, that really does something in one day to pick up the group of the University of Chicago crowd and the Catholic bishops. You've united unlikely allies here.
But against that, as you said, David, there's huge pressure on the Republicans and coming from the White House to get this tax bill done.
Yeah, a lot of donors say if you don't pass something, and they're not even thinking about what's in the bill, they just pass it. And I'm never giving you another cent. The Republicans are hearing that a lot. So they do feel that pressure. And so it's another vote they're going to have to hate.
A mark on the wall. All right, David Brooks, Mark Shields, happy Thanksgiving weekend to both of you.
Thank you very much, Judy.